is being recorded.
Hi, aloha everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today at Kono Honganji for a very special Buddhist education seminar. I'm really excited and honored to introduce my good friend, Reverend Enrique Galvan-Alvarez from the UK. And so he was born in the Canary Islands and has spent most of his adult life in the UK. In 2011, he obtained his PhD in modern languages, and shortly after started working at an all-online university where he is now a full professor, just as of recently. So he encountered the Buddha's teachings in 2003, and he started practicing under various Tibetan teachers. In 2011, he encountered Shinran Shoning's teachings and was deeply moved by the writings of Reverend Dr. Al Balloon, whom he sustained a 5-year-long correspondence. Enrique continued his studies of Jodo Shinshu with other sensei and Dharma friends at Dr. Bloom's recommendations in Europe, in Japan, and in America. In 2019, he was ordained at the Nishi Honganji, and since then he has been actively spreading the Buddha Dharma, both in English and in Spanish. During the COVID-19 pandemic, when all Buddhist activities went online, he started a Spanish language online Ko, which now has members across the Spanish-speaking world. He also serves as the Jodo Shinshu UK community by offering online sessions and visiting members in their homes across England. He was certified as Kyoshi minister in January of 2025 this year, and is currently organizing the 21st European Shin Buddhist Conference, which will take place in Oxford, England, in September 2025. And so this is his first time coming to Hawaii and first time on the Big Island. And so please give a warm welcome,
UK is
Reverend Dr. Enrique.
Thank you.
from England.
This is from England?
Yeah, the
Thank you
speaker
very
is
much.
English.
My pleasure to be here. Yes, thank you so much for coming today. And I've met some of you this morning at, oh, see if I can remember. There's too many names, too many new names in a short period of time. Hulaola Honganji? Holualoa, thank you. Holualoa Honganji this morning. So it's nice to see you again. Some of you are meeting for the first time. So it's nice to meet you. I'm sure we'll have a chance to chat afterwards. So some of you have heard me talking about how I feel here in Hawaii, how at home I feel in many ways, how similar it feels to my home country, how different it is to my country of residence as well. But it's really nice to be here. So I'm very pleased to meet Blaine Sensei again, to catch up, and to be in this wonderful place. And so, when I was in conversation with Reverend Blaine about this seminar at Kona Honganji, he asked me to talk about something more practical, more applied, about the application of the Jodo Shinshu teaching in my life. And so today, I want to share with you a particular story that happened to me and how I found meaning in that difficult, painful story through the Jodo Shinshu teachings. Normally, when I talk publicly, because I'm also a professor, I tend to joke a lot. I aim to make the audience laugh a little bit, entertain, as well as convey a message. But this, it's not going to be like that. It's a different kind of talk. However, it's something that is very close to my heart, as you will see. So I'm going to start guiding you through what we're going to do. And if we could share the PowerPoint. Okay, thank you. So I realize it might be a little bit hard for you to read from the screen because it's not so big, but I'm very happy to read what is written there. And I'm also happy to share it with you afterwards. Blaine Sensei has it, so yeah, you can go ahead. Could we make it slideshow? Thank you. So, normally we start Dharma talk by reading a passage from the teaching Gosandai. And so in this particular occasion, the story, the narrative that helped me face this difficult situation, which I'm going to talk to you about very shortly, was the story of the two rivers and the wide path. And so I'm going to read to you the story as it is translated in CWS, in the collected works of Xinnan. This is a story that is from Master Shandao from China, and it's a story that Xinnan quotes in Kyogyo Shinshu. So, well, we got some issues. Just listen. It's fine. I find like PowerPoint can be a distraction as much as a... So this is more for me. These are my notes that I'm sharing with you. But you can just listen. Now, I'm going to read the story. Suppose there is a traveler journeying 100,000 li measurement towards the west, when suddenly, along the way, he comes upon two rivers in a single channel, one of fire extending southward, and one of water extending north. Each river is 100 paces across, immeasurably deep and endless to the north and south. Dividing the fire and water is a single wide path, 4 or 5 inches wide. This path from the eastern bank to the western bank is 100 paces in length. Billows of water surge over the path and flames sweep up to scorch it. Water and fire thus alternate without a break. Now the traveler has already journeyed deep into the vast and solitary wilderness. There is no one to be seen, but bands of brigands and wild beasts lurk there, and seeing the traveler alone, they vie with each other to kill him. Fearing for his life, the traveler at once flees towards the west, when without warning the great rivers appear. He reflects, I can see no end to this river, either to the north or south. In the middle is a wide path, but it is exceedingly narrow. Although the two banks are but slightly separated, how is it possible to cross? Assuredly, this day I shall die. If I turn back, brigands and wild beasts will press closer and closer upon me. If I run north or south, beasts and poisonous insects will contend with each other to attack me. If I venture on the path westward, surely I will plunge into the two currents of water and fire. Don't worry. There are no words to express the terror and despair that fill him at this point. He thinks further to himself. If I turn back now, I die. If I remain here, I die. If I go forward, I die. There is no way for me to escape death. Therefore, I choose to go forth, venturing on this path. Since this path exists, it must be possible to cross the rivers. When this thought occurs to him, he suddenly hears the encouraging voice of someone on the eastern bank. "O traveler, just resolve to follow this path forward. You will certainly not encounter the grief of death. But if you stay where you are, you will surely die." Further, someone on the western bank calls to him. "O traveler, with mind that is single, with right-mindedness, come at once. I will protect you. Have no fear of plunging to grief in the water or fire." The traveler, having heard the exhortation on his side of the river and the call from the other, immediately acquires firm resolution in body and mind and decisively takes the path, advancing directly without entertaining any doubt or apprehension. When he has gone but 1 or 2 paces, the brigands on the eastern bank call out to him, "O traveler, come back. The path is treacherous and permits no crossing. You are certain to meet your death. None of us address you thus with evil intent." The traveler hears the voices calling him, but he gives no backward glance. Thinking only of the path, he advances directly forward with a mind that is single, and forthwith reaches the western side, free forever of all afflictions. He meets his good friend, and his joy is boundless. So, this is a story that you might be familiar with, and this is how it is depicted normally. Let's see if this works. It doesn't work, but if you could turn the slide, that would be great. It Anyway, it's just yes, exactly. It's a representation of the two rivers. You see the river of fire to the left, the river of water to the right. You have the traveler there in white clothes, traversing this very narrow path, heading towards the west. And you have the voices, right, of the two Buddhas. So it's a very dramatic scene, right? And here you have the text in Chinese of what's going on, right, explaining. And you have all these people chasing him. So, this is a story you're all familiar with? You've heard it before? No? Okay. Do you get the feeling of it? Yeah? Great, that's fine. You don't need to have heard it before. It's important to get the feeling. Now, I'm going to give you the interpretation of the story, the traditional one, Shan Dao's interpretation. So Shan Dao, this Chinese teacher, Chinese master, if we could move on to the next slide, please, presents this story and then explains what he means by this, right? Explains what each of these characters, each of these elements mean. And so he says the wild beasts are the skandhas and the six senses. The skandhas are the different components of human being, of human existence, right? So it's our human body, our human mind, our reactions, right? Our thought processes, our emotions, all these things. And the senses, right? We're constantly receiving. So it's kind of how we function as human beings. And this is kind of constantly generating this anxiety, right? We're constantly being driven by like, oh, am I in danger? You know, fight or flight, kind of. Now, the brigands are, these are his words, non-Buddhist views on the path of self-power. Path of self-power is the idea that you, by your own efforts, can make it. You can become awakened by your own power, by your own merit, by your own effort, so that you are in control in other ways, right? Non-Buddhist views is a very general way of talking about anything other than not is. I personally don't read it as a sectarian thing. It's like, all the religions, they are bad. No. But it's just like what is not the path of the Dharma. Yeah? What it deviates from impermanence for interdependence. Personally, actually, I think of it these days as all those things that distract us from the reality of life. The fact that life is impermanent, life is interdependent, right? Anything that makes me more selfish. That's kind of non-Buddhist views. And, you know, this path of self-power is a Buddhist path, but it's very much focused on me and what I can achieve by my own efforts, right? Now, the white path is the Nembutsu, the Namo Amida Butsu, which I imagine you've all heard before? Yeah? Great, okay. So this is the white path that cuts across this deep river, or two rivers. The river of water is talking about greed, is talking about attachment, is talking about selfish desire. The river of fire is anger, is hatred, right? So one is hot, the other one is, it's not really cold, but it's, yeah, anyway. These are the symbols. And then the two voices, as we were looking at in the previous slide, are the two Buddhas. So Shakyamuni from the east, Amida from the west. Amida Buddha is always in the west because the west is, what happens in the west? The sun sets, right? Now you live in a beautiful part of the world where you get amazing sunsets. So you're looking straight at the Pure Land, right? Across the ocean. Why is the Pure Land in the west? Or why we talk about the Pure Land as being in the west? The west is where the sun goes to rest. Is completion, is the end of life, is the end of the journey. So symbolically is the place where we all come to rest, right? Where the journey is fulfilled. And Amida Buddha is from, Shakyamuni Buddha, the so-called historical Buddha, is from the east, right? That is not that symbolic, but I think the sense is like, well, he's moving forward. The west is where things go. It's the future, right? The sun moves towards the west, moves towards the future. Shakyamuni Buddha is from the past. He lived in India many centuries ago. So it's the voice from the past, it's the voice from the tradition, it's the voice from the teachers of the tradition that are talking to us, right? And telling us, go forward towards the future. Go forward towards awakening, which is what the Pure Land represents. And the traveler, of course, is me, is each of you, is each of us, right, who are journeying on this path. Now, this is the basic story. Okay, so you might have heard it before, but if you haven't, like, well, hopefully you have a sense now. Now, I'm gonna tell you a little bit why this story, or how this story became somehow relevant. But before that, do you have any questions? I like to do things very interactively. So I'll talk for bits, but I'm very happy for you to interject, interrupt, ask, comment. So far, any questions or anything you want to say? No? Okay. So I launch into my story. So if we can move on to the next slide. Right, so this is the story of my friend Paula. Her real name was not Paula, but I've changed her name to anonymize her, but also for me to take some emotional distance from this, because it was a personally very difficult moment. So on the morning of December the 20th, 2022, I woke up to the news that my friend Paula had committed suicide. She had been unwell for many months, and I was one of the first people to receive the news. Before her family, in fact, which was kind of odd. We were not the closest of friends, but in her last months, while she was unwell, she had reached out to me, and we had been texting on and off. So we had contact in her last few months. I felt deeply distraught and overcome by guilt. So what is the first thing I did? The first thing I did was to do the funeral service. Right? She was not a Buddhist, but she was very open to Buddhism, and her family was very happy for me to do a Buddhist service, and we had a lot of common friends, right? So they were also very happy. So I just did the funeral service in my home, recorded it, Zoom, and sent it to everybody. So that was my first instinct, right? And then it's the only time I've done the full cycle of every week do a service for 7 weeks, finishing with a big 49th day memorial. And this was a very interesting journey, because some weeks I would do the service on my own and record it for the friends. Other weeks we'll have the chance to meet. So I did it with different people at different occasions. And it was various opportunities for different people connected to her. She was somebody who was loved by many people. Many people knew her. I was surprised to find out how many people actually had come in contact with her. And so different people could join different weeks. So it was a whole journey of 7 weeks, of 49 days, in which I was grieving Paula, and grieving Paula together with others who were close to her. So if we move on to the next slide, please. How do the two stories come together? The story of the white path on the two rivers, and my personal story of my friend's suicide. So this is how it made sense to me. So the wild beasts were the raw pain and the guilt of wanting to save somebody who couldn't be saved. So when somebody dies, we always experience guilt. I think it's a very common feeling. I have friends who have lost their parents. They were the best children. They were with the parents on the deathbed, right there by the deathbed, assisting them, spending time with them for months. They still feel guilt. It's very common. It's a very natural feeling. It's not necessarily rational, but it's very, very normal. It's very, very natural. Now, when somebody commits suicide, the guilt is way more intense, right? Because you feel, I should have done something. Surely there's something I could have done, right? And so these are the wild beasts that are chasing me, like the traveler on the path, right? And so the brigands, which are the ones, the seductive views, the view of self-power, right? So it's the seductive view that I could somehow help Paula by doing rituals, accumulating merit, doing Buddhist practice, and all of this kind of magical thinking. Because my first reaction from my gut was like, I'm going to chant the Shoshinge. And I have to be honest with you. Of course, I'm a Jodo Shinshu minister. I know what I'm supposed to say. Funerals are for the living, not for the dead. And I do believe that. I do believe that. But that day, the 22nd of December, or the 20th of December 2022, I cannot tell you, honestly, that I could hold that view at a deeper level. Not here, I can say that, and I would say that to people, I would always say that. But here, there was something else going on. I really have this urge to do something, right? And that was my way of channeling it. Now, the white path is the Nembutsu. Nembutsu is a very big subject, right? But in this context, for me, what it meant was seeing things as they actually are, confronting both Paula's suffering and my reaction to it as they were. So seeing it honestly, Nembutsu and Shinjin, I see them as two sides of a coin. What is the first mind of the triple Shinjin of the 18th vow? Sincere mind. Is seeing things as they actually are. And that means seeing myself as I actually am. So when I did that funeral, if I am honest with myself and with you, I was trying to save Paula. I was trying to remedy her suffering out of my sense of guilt, right? So this Nembutsu is this kind of clarity, the path of the Nembutsu. Now, the river of water was the attachment, right? The river of attachment is wanting to save Paula, the belief that I had more power than I actually had. The river of fire is the anger. Anger turned inwards, turns into depression, turns into guilt. So it was the guilt associated with the realization there was nothing I could do. And here I am at this crossroads, right? Experiencing the guilt, experiencing the temptation to do something, right? To somehow comfort my guilt. And then there are the two voices. There's the Dharma manifesting as Paula, showing me my powerlessness, my inadequacies, and yet warmly embracing me and her with all of our faults. Right? These are the voices of the two Buddhas. This is the Dharma. Now, maybe there's nothing you can do. And then the traveler, of course, is me, navigating grief and doing all of this as I do the rituals for 7 weeks. Okay? Anything, any thoughts, anything you want to respond to this? No? Okay. So, slide, sorry. So, transformation. So, as I did the funerary cycle, something interesting happened. And this happened over those 7 weeks, but it also happened, over the whole year. I did the Hatsubon for Paula. I did the 1 year memorial, or actually, well, the Japanese system would be 2 years, but like 1 year after. 1 year after, I found myself in Kyoto. So I did like a pilgrimage and various things. But there was something that was transforming. And I'm not going to get into the psychology of it, why her death hit me so hard. But there's definitely something shifting. I was realizing something. So at first, when I got the news, Paula was like a ghost, right? She appeared to me as this raw guilt, raw suffering. And so what I tried to do was to magically do something to solve that, right? Do the rituals, right? And hopefully, magically, everything will be okay. I will feel better. She will be liberated. Everything will be fine, right? But I'm not looking at the root of the problem. I'm not looking at myself. So this story is really about myself and me navigating grief. It's not really about Paula. I'll say it a little bit at the end, but it's about my process. So first, I'm seduced by this, right? And so for me, it was like, right, can I deal with this without actually having to look at the root of the problem, which is what I find often we do, right? Okay, let me find a hack. There's got to be a way around actually dealing with the raw emotions, the raw feelings, right? So as I moved away from that, right, I had to face the depth of the river of water, the river of fire, the depth of my bono, my negative emotions, right? And in a way, I mean, like the river of water is kind of a distorted form of maitri, loving kindness. It's coming from a good place. You want to do something good. It's not a bad thing, but it's not grounded in reality. It's distorted somehow. And then this guilt as well. It's like a distorted form of compassion, of karuna. It's coming from a good place, but it's distorted. It's somehow not grounded in reality, right? And so these are the rivers of water, rivers of fire. But there's a wide path, right? And if we move on to the next slide, thank you. So between these two haunting emotions lie the narrow, seemingly impossible wide path. We never want to face what's actually there, right? And this is a path that was very hard to traverse because it was a path of listening rather than doing. It was a path of accepting rather than proactively trying to do something, right? And it implied accepting that I needed saving as much as her, and that I couldn't help her according to my wishes. Now, when the traveler steps on this path, he hears the voices of the two Buddhas. And when I started accepting the reality of my powerlessness, when I started coming round to the fact that there was nothing I could do, right, in the face of Paula's death and of her suffering, she appeared to me, metaphorically speaking, she appeared to me as Shakyamuni, telling me to simply accept things as they truly are, encouraging me that it will be fine. And she also appeared to me as Amida, calling me forward. I shall protect you. Do not worry about the deep rivers. So there's an interesting transformation here once you face that reality, right? And that reality is like, my power is limited, is really limited to help other people in the way I imagine. And yet that doesn't mean that I cannot help people. We can move on to the next one. Before that. And so this is a book that I would recommend to all of you because I think it's great, but unfortunately it's not very easily available. And this is written by my colleague Caroline Brazier. She got ordained with me. She has a background in psychotherapy. She's also a Buddhist minister in the UK. And she wrote this really great book called Guilt and Exploration. And it's kind of like a novel. It's a short novel where she explores her feelings of guilt in a semi-fictionalized way. And she talks about different kinds of guilt. And there are forms of guilt that are kind of more rooted in reality, rooted in something that we have done wrong, perhaps. And then guilt is kind of blown out of proportion. But the root of it is a kind of moral conscience. But there's a kind of guilt which is completely not grounded in anything real, which is the guilt of not being able to control things. When something bad happens to you, especially not so much to you, but to somebody you love, there's a feeling of like, oh, I should have done something, right? If there's somebody who is more vulnerable than you, right, you feel, it's my role to protect that person. How did I let that happen? And there's immense guilt in that. But often, sometimes it's obvious you could have done something, you didn't do it. Okay, well, maybe. Those occasions are very, very rare. Very, very rare. Because if you care about that person and you can do something, you do it. Of course. Right? So, the problem is we cannot do anything. We couldn't have done anything. But this guilt is easier to feel guilty than to accept, actually, there's nothing I could have done otherwise. It wasn't in my hands. It wasn't in my control. And that's a very difficult realization. But this helped me very much. I don't know. Do you want to share something or you want to say something? No? Okay, I'll carry on. So we go on to the next one. So this reminded me of these 3 wasan by Shindan, right? Which talk about how, I mean, I'm going to move on to, this all might sound very negative in a sense, that there's nothing we can do. And there's nothing we can do in the face of certain circumstances, like the death of a loved one, particularly a suicide. However, I believe there are ways in which we can help others. But in order to do that, there has to be a giving up process. And these 3 wasan, I think they are wonderful in that regard. This first one kind of encapsulates the other 2. I like to always read them in Japanese as well, because they are poems. They are meant to be sung. They are meant to be recited. So whether you speak Japanese or not, it doesn't matter. Just appreciate how it sounds. Nyorai no eko ni kinyu shite, gansabushi no uru hito wa, jiriki no eko o sutte hatete, ryaku shujo wa kiwamo nashi. This is a very interesting one, because this is my translations. Upon taking refuge and entering the flow of merit of the Tathagata, of the Buddha, the person realizes the aspiration to become Buddha. Abandoning the dedication of merit of self-power, the benefiting of beings has no limit. There's a paradox here. Sometimes we really want to help, and that's coming from a good place, but it can be misguided. And sometimes the ways in which we help others are not conscious, and not the ways we imagine, and not the ways we would like to help. The trouble with helping somebody is that we want to do it in our own terms. I want to help you like I imagine, because I know what you need, and that often makes things worse, or at best is inefficient. Now, a very good example I get when, I mean, I talk a lot. I'm a minister, I'm a lecturer. So I'm trained to talk forever. That's why you need to interrupt me. That's what I want you to talk, because I can carry on until tomorrow morning, right? But I say a lot of things, and I don't remember everything I say. And one of the scariest things is when somebody says to me, that thing you say, and I go like, what did I say? That thing you said really helped me. I was like, okay, what did I say? I mean, often what happens is people hear something other than what you said, other than what you intended, and that's okay, if it helped them, right? But it's just like, that thing you said really helped me, and I go like, okay, what did I say? And I think like, yeah, that's something, sounds like something I could have said, but I do not recall saying it. I didn't walk away from that conversation thinking like, oh, that thing I said really helped him or her or them. It's more like, oh yeah, something, right? So there's a kind of naturalness, there's a kind of spontaneity that you're not in control. But it comes out. And those are the things that tend to help people most, because you're not trying to help. And I think this is what this wasan in very technical doctrinal language is talking about, right? So we enter the dynamic of awakening. We enter the dedication of merit, the flow of merit of the primal vow, and we abandon our own efforts to save all beings, right? And by doing that, paradoxically, we really help. It doesn't make sense. It's like, how am I helping people by giving up the idea of helping people, right? But somehow the problem is our idea of helping people can be very self-centered. Mine was when I approached the situation with my friend Paula, right? And so I had 2 more that are also going in the same direction. And again, we'll do the same thing. I'll read them in Japanese, read the translation, and I'll tell you a little bit about how I think they are relevant to this particular situation. So, Namo Amida Butsu no eko no ondoku kodai fushigi ni te oso eko no riyaku ni wa genso eko ni enyu seri. This is very interesting. So the flow of merit of Namo Amida Butsu is benevolent, virtuous, vast, and inconceivable. In the benefit of the flow of merit that leads to go forth to the Pure Land is already the flow of merit that allows us to turn and enter into returning to samsara to save all beings. Okay, again, there's a lot of language. There's a lot of technical terms and everything. What does this mean? What does this mean? To me, this means that the best way, and this follows from the previous one, I think actually they are, I didn't put the numbers in, this is in the Shozomatsu Wasan, in the Wasan of the Dharma eras. I think they are in order, so it's a sequence. That's what I want to read them to you like that. It's a sequence. Shinran is developing this thought, right? So when we enter, right, the journey to the Pure Land, we have already started to return. So those of you who came to the service this morning, I was talking about how the Pure Land is a place of we go to, but also we return from. To come back to this world, come back to samsara to help all beings. And as I said, like the Buddha pays for both trips, for both books, both journeys, and pays for them, right? And when you get, this is like when you travel among islands on the same day, which I've been doing while I've been here. And you go in the morning, you get your boarding pass for the first journey, for the outward journey. I already give you the boarding pass for the return journey, right? It's the same idea. So when you go in a way, you already returning. But what does this mean? The returning means to help others. The going means to help yourself. So what's the best way to help others is to help yourself. And vice versa. The best way to help yourself is to help others. Right? In Buddhism, sometimes we talk about self-benefit, benefit in others. But they're not two separate things. If I'm going to such lengths to help others in a way that does harm to myself, I'm not really helping them. I'm not really helping them. And if I'm putting myself first in such a way that I'm being of damage to others, I'm not really helping myself either. I'm actually hurting myself. Basically, your happiness, my happiness are interdependent. Your awakening, my awakening are interdependent. And that is the meaning of the Namo Amida Butsu. Because without me, Dharmakara Bodhisattva cannot become Amida Buddha. Without me, there can be no Amida Buddha. Without Namo, there's no Amida Butsu. In our tradition, we say the name is Namo Amida Butsu, right? We don't say just Amida Butsu. Oh, I'm worshiping, oh, like Amida Butsu, Amida Butsu. It's like, no, Namo Amida Butsu. This is an interesting one. Sogaryojin Sensei, right? Yeah, there's something there, right? It's a conversation, it's a dynamic. So the vow of the Buddha is, if all beings are not free, I cannot become free. Our awakening, our liberation, our freedom from suffering are interconnected. And I cannot be free if you're not free. And you cannot be free if I'm not free. Right? So that's why when we enter the journey towards awakening, we are starting the process of awakening all beings. So the two need to go hand in hand, right? The two are interconnected. And finally, there is this one. Oso eko no daiji yori, genso eko no daihi ou. Nyorai no eko nakarise wa, jodo no bodai wa ikkaga sen. So, again, it's quite hard to translate it, to render it into... I translate not to produce a nice translation. This is my notes. This is how I make sense of the text, right? So I like to translate it. Sometimes I translate it very literally, just to make sense of it. But I'm sure that we could find a way to make it sound more poetic. Now, the flow of merit that helps us that helps us go towards awakening, go towards the Pure Land, right, is the Buddha's great love, great Maitri, right? Metta. Now, in the flow of merit of returning, we become the Buddha's compassion. And were it not for the Tathaga's flow of merit, how could the Pure Land that is awakening be realized? Again, same thing. To me, this is saying, if I'm not free, you cannot be free. If you're not free, I cannot be free. We receive the compassion of the Buddha, and by receiving it, we are passing it on to others. Right? So sometimes the best way to help others is to help yourself. The best way to help yourself is to help others. Talking about the same thing again. So we receive the Buddha's compassion, and by receiving it, that flows outwards from us. And in that way, the Pure Land that is awakening, nirvana, is possible, right? Because we are interconnected, because we are sharing in this process together, right? Interrupt me, please. It's becoming very self... No? No,
Any
please.
questions for Sensei? Anybody online have any questions? No.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to, yeah. No? Okay, so I mean, these three wasan to me, if we can move on to the next slide, please. They show us how the Nembutsu is a point of transformation. It's this kind of wide path that we were talking about, this wide path of looking at myself as I actually am and accepting my limitations, accepting my shortcomings. And in our tradition, we talk about Namo Amida Butsu, not as a practice that we do or something we recite. The focus is not on the mouth, it's on the ear. The point of the Namo Amida Butsu is to hear it, not to say it. Right? And this is very important because it changes the dynamic completely. Oh, we got a question. I'm very happy to, engage with that.
Okay, so there's a question in the chat. Could you please elaborate on the difference between saying Namo Amida Butsu and Amida Butsu?
Yeah? Yeah, between Namo Amida Butsu and Amida Butsu, yeah. Right, so without getting too technical into this, which we can if the person wants, but like, it's not showing there. The Namo includes me. The Namo stands for the person to be saved, the person to be liberated. So my understanding is that Namo Amida Butsu talks about a relation, right? And I am a key part of that relation. Because Amida Buddha doesn't exist by itself. Exists for me. Exists for me to become awakened. Exists for me to realize how things work. This is very different from a Christian God or some ways of talking about God, which God exists. God creates the universe. Amida Buddha is not like that. Amida Buddha exists, like when Shinran Shonin in Tanisho, he says like, the primal vow was for me, Shinran alone. He's not saying, oh, it's not for all of you, it's just for me. He's not saying that. But the point is, this has to be a personal experience, if you see what I mean. So Amida Buddha is the expression of boundless wisdom and compassion reaching out to me. And I don't mean me, Enrique, I mean me, each of you. But I cannot say, when we say all beings are embraced, that's true, that's fine. But that means I am embraced. That's the point, that's the big point, if you see, for each and one of us to realize, oh, I am embraced. I am embraced, right? And so, what I'm saying is that the vow of Dharmakara Bodhisattva is, if all beings don't become, I'm paraphrasing and I'm simplifying it, if all beings don't become awakened, I will not become awakened. So Dharmakara Bodhisattva stakes his own awakening on me, on each of you. But for me, what's relevant is on me. And if I don't go to the Pure Land and become a Buddha, Dharmakara Bodhisattva says, I will not reach Buddhahood. So it is a relationship, and that relationship is expressed in the formula Namo Amida Butsu. Amida Butsu being this awakening, this boundless wisdom and compassion that embraces my self-centeredness, which is represented by Namo. And I think it's very important that the two are together. And there has to be a tension, a relationship between both, right? Is this Namo Amida Butsu. Amida Butsu, we could be just like, revering an external figure that is kind of disconnected from me. But when we say Namo Amida Butsu, it says Amida Butsu exists because of Namo. Namo exists because of Amida Butsu. So we are in this relationship. Think about it this way. How many of you are parents? Okay. How many of you are children? Yeah, all of us, right? We all have parents. Now, I'm only a child. I don't have children. But those of you who have children, you can say, I'm a parent. Right? You are a parent in relation. Okay? You are a parent in relation. Yeah, okay? You're a parent in relation to your children. And you're a child in relation to your parent. Right? So you are both, but it depends on relation to whom. Right? So can you be a teacher? Nobody is a teacher. Nobody's anything. Everybody is something in relation to somebody else, right? I can only be a teacher if I have students. If I don't have students, I'm not going to be in a room talking by myself. Then I'll have imaginary students, then I'm still in relation to them somehow, right? So everything, this is the basic Buddhist understanding, interdependence. Everything happens in relation, right? So think about the example of the child and the parent. So like Namo Amida Butsu is like that. Nobody is Buddha either. Buddha is in relation to bamboo. So if there's no bamboo, there's no Buddha. And if there's no Buddha, there's no bamboo. But there is Buddha and there is bamboo. And that's what Namo Amida Butsu expresses. But more than that, is the fact that they are both in relation to each other. That Buddha embraces bamboo. Buddha holds bamboo. Buddha takes bamboo towards awakening. Right? So, it's not like they become one. They are two, but they are deeply, deeply interrelated. Parent and child, are they one? No. But are they separate? No. They can only exist one because of the other, and they are kind of. Like your child is half of you. And you are both your parents. Right? So are you the same? Are you one? No. But are you separate? No, either. You couldn't exist one without the other. Right? So this is my understanding of the Namo Amida Butsu, is this deep relationship. Deep relationship. Right? So I've answered that question maybe? Yeah. So now, moving on from that, the point is not to recite this. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. The point is to hear it and to appreciate this relationship. But in order to hear it, we need to say it. Yeah, please. Yeah. You want the original meaning. Right, so this is the thing. So, oh, whiteboard would be nice now. Sorry. I didn't. We all speak English. Now, that's an advantage because Namo Amida Butsu comes from Sanskrit. Sanskrit is an Indo-European language, right? And it has a lot of words in common with English. And so, Buddha, we all know what Buddha is, right? Awakening, like the person who has awakened. But there's nothing that sounds like Buddha in English. In other European languages, there is. So actually, in languages from the Balkans, in Croatian, in Serbian, bud is a verb, which means to literally to be awake, to wake up, right, in the morning. Now, Namo and Amida, yes, we can connect them to English words. What does Namo sound to you? Something similar in English? Yeah, exactly. So, Namo in Sanskrit is to greet, is to take refuge, is to salute, namaskar, right? It comes from there. So, when I greet you, and I'm very sorry that I have forgotten your name already. Jack, yeah, okay. So when I greet, it's like, hey, Jack, I am naming you, and I am greeting you. I'm acknowledging you. And most importantly, I am thinking about you. So when I say, Jack, I'm thinking about you. If I say to you, don't think of a cow, what happens? You're all thinking of a cow now, right? So this is the same. When you say a word, however subconsciously, however, not necessarily in a super focused way, but you say a word, there's a thought associated with it. There's an awareness. There's an acknowledgement. And names carry that power, if you want, right? Makes us think about things. And so when we say Namo, we are acknowledging, we are naming, we are thinking of, we are doing all these things, right? So this is the Namo. Now, Amida, Sanskrit is Amita, Mita, right? And then in Chinese and Japanese, it started being pronounced differently, fine. But again, what does Amita relate to in English? When you add an A at the beginning of a word in English, what does it do? Yeah, negative, negate something, atypical, right? I can't think of many now, but I'm sure you can, yeah. What's that? Abnormal. Yes, abnormal is another one. But yeah, it's like it negates something. It's something, it's not that, right? Now, what does mita sound to you like? That's like literally the same word in English. Well, need. Oh, mita. No. A meter, you pronounce it differently, maybe in American English. A meter, a measure. Yeah. So amita means no meter, no measure, right? And Buddha means awaken, right, or awakening. So you are naming, you are acknowledging, you are thinking of measureless, immeasurable awakening. Now, the naming is you do it in a way, right? When I say Jack, yeah, I'm calling you Jack, I'm naming you. So the naming is your side, if you want. And the other side is this limitless awakening that is always supporting us, that is always there for us, right? And in Jodo Shinshu, we say, well, it's all happening through Tariki, it's all happening through other power. So it is the measureless awakening that brings me to name it, right? And there's various examples for that, right? So when you say mom, or when you say dad, right, is because you have received, and those words have a kind of positive association for you, right? Is because you have received that affection, that love from your mother, from your father, or from whoever it is, right? And so you could say your mother's love manifests in you saying, Mom, because you know Mom is going to respond, right? That's one way of explaining, a very Japanese way of explaining. There are other ways of explaining. But anyway, does that make sense? The Namo Amida Butsu now, and how it is a relationship where I am a very important part of the equation. Because without me, there can be no Amida Buddha, right? Because the vow is, if all beings don't become Buddha, I will not become Buddha. So it's not like Dharmakara was a very kind person. He was very kind, but like, it's not like he's a kind person who decided, oh, I'm going to, out of my great compassion, I'm going to postpone my awakening until you all get there because I'm such a kind guy. He realizes, if you are not all free, I cannot be free. Our freedom are interconnected. That's how it works. If I'm in pain, you cannot be happy. If you're in pain, I cannot be happy. Our happiness, our suffering are intertwined, right? So all of that is packed into this. This I think is just genius. It's amazing. This is Namo Amida Butsu. And so Jodo Shinshu, we say it, of course, but with the aim of actually hearing, with the aim of actually receiving that meaning, appreciating that meaning. So it's not so much Namandabu, 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 Namandabu. How many have I done? Namandabu. It's like Namandabu. Ah, Namandabu. What does it mean? What does it mean? Not linguistically, but it's important to start from there. It's important to know what it says. But what does it mean for me? Where am I? Where am I in that Namandabu? That's the question I would ask you. When you hear your own or other people's Namandabu, ask yourself, where am I? Where am I in that Namandabu? So anyway, in this context, and anything else you want to say? No? In this context, I started by saying the Nembutsu in a kind of very proactive way, if you want. I'm going to say the Nembutsu. I'm going to save Paula. I'm going to do the Shoshinge. I'm going to do this all the 7 weeks of the cycle, and I'm going to do this thing. And as I went along, I realized, oh, it's not me who's saving Paula. It's Paula who's saving me. This experience, this painful experience, is making me reflect on myself, is showing me something about myself, is showing me my limitations, right? And that's the most precious thing. So, so the Nembutsu is, I'm just using the Nembutsu as an analogy, as a way in which we talk about this, because we go from reciting to hearing. And I went from trying to save her, from accepting her as somebody who can show me something about myself, right? So this is very hard. And the character, the Chinese character that gets translated as insight, Ning, is this one that you have here. Yeah, insight is a nicer word, but it's literally to tolerate, to endure. And it's like the character for kokoro, for heart, and a sword. So a sword to the heart. That's very hard to accept, very hard to tolerate. We sometimes are not in control. It's very hard to listen sometimes, right? To hear this. Anyway, let's move on if we can. I'm probably gonna skip the next one. I wanted to read you this quotation from Kakehashi Sensei that I found it very inspiring in this context. So in the Yuima Gyo, in the Vimalakirti Nirdesha Sutra, there are expressions like the world filled with blind passions is the practice hall of the Dharma. And the threefold realm of transmigration is the practice hall of the Dharma. What these expressions point out is, when we are led to realize through various sufferings that the Pure Land is the ultimate refuge for all people, we can find this world filled with blind passions, or the threefold realm of transmigration, to be the practice hall of the Dharma, in which we can find the Tathagata, the Buddha, even within devils. So move on to the next one. When we understand that in prosperity or in adversity, every event in life is the practice hall of the Dharma, where we can ascertain its truth and reality, we will realize that nothing is useless or meaningless in life. Then we will come to recognize the Tathagata in everything in the world. That is why Shinran says, this Tathagata pervades the countless worlds. For the practicer of Shinjin, who humbly tries to hear truth from everything and every event, even devils or followers of other religions turn into good teachers. However, to be able to see the Tathagata in a devil, we must have the wisdom given by the Tathagata. Jodo Shinshu is not a religion that prays for the elimination of misfortunes from life. For Amida Buddha directs to us the wisdom that turns misfortune into merit. So there's no need to pray for anything, right? Anyway, I think this is so interesting because at first, my friend appeared to me as a ghost, as a devil, if you want. And through this process, I came to see her as a bodhisattva. I saw her as a problem to be solved. But that problem that I thought needed solving was a teaching for me. Was a situation that was teaching me something, that was showing me something about myself. So I'm very thankful to her from that point of view. So if we can move on. So this process of grieving and doing the funerary cycle for her led me to see her as a bodhisattva, one of the many bodhisattvas in my life, come back from the Pure Land and are guiding me to that same place, to the Pure Land. At first, her memory was filled with pain, suffering, guilt. She was like a ghost that demanded my attention and triggered this self-centered desire to save her, right? But then later on, I came to appreciate her as a bodhisattva who was guiding me to the Pure Land. And her memory reminds me that I am embraced as I am, with my inadequacies and my shortcomings. And in this way, she is a Genso Eko Bodhisattva. Genso Eko Bodhisattva means the bodhisattva that returns from the Pure Land. Today we did Oborn service, so the ancestors return from the Pure Land to help us, to guide us, to illumine us, to show us who we are. And so, I'm going to skip a few slides. But anyway, do you have any thoughts on this? Anything that you would like to share?
Like, what a very powerful way of looking at life and looking at the kind of the joys and the sorrows of life as lessons, right? To deepen our own understanding of our own selves, right? I think that's what I think Shinran's teaching and the Nembutsu offers us, is that life of deep introspection and a deep reflection on life at its most basic level, right? And I think the Dharma helps to guide us in seeing life in its fullness, and being able to know that we're not alone in facing that, right? So.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's right. And I mean, I think what this teaching is about is appreciating those people in your life that are bringing you to that awareness, bringing you to that realization. And in a deep sense, that's everybody. That's very hard, though. That's very hard. I'm talking about one person in my life. Please, yeah.
I was,
Mm. 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 Yeah, so I think the moment you realize that you do it out of vanity, that's it. Oh, that happens. Right. So that the penny drops when the penny drops, right? I don't. Well, I mean, what I would say is that if you are listening to the teaching, if you live the teaching ballet, well, you say the Nembutsu, you listen to the Nembutsu, you're interested in this. There's something that calls you to this. You're here today because there's an interest, right? And you are here today hearing this. So this is like a kind of percolating process. In Jodo Shinshu, I think, I would say we don't really use tools in that way. But that doesn't mean we do nothing. It's not like if you just sit at home, it's just the penny's not going to drop. So this is the trick, right? So if we do nothing, nothing happens. But things don't happen because we do something else. Things kind of happen in their own way. So you have to sow seeds, you could say. You have to, the way I talk about it is like engage with the teaching. But also it's not like you have to force yourself to do it. Because if you're interested, you will naturally seek it out. And the more you hear it, the more you engage with it, that becomes part of you. And when a moment like that happens, the penny might drop. And the moment the penny drops, then you're like, oh, I'm just doing this for the wrong reasons. Like, I mean, in my life, the best things that have happened to me are things that I was not open to, things I didn't want to happen. And then when they happened, I was so happy. But my first reaction was like, nope, I don't want that. But then something works itself out. But because there is a connection, right? So this is the kind of Jodo Shinshu path is kind of slippery in a way. Because in a way, if you want to have a tool, it's another form of control. Yeah. And that's fine, because we all need to feel some kind of control. So we do have the Nembutsu, which is a very powerful tool in a way. But then the trick is, but if you turn it into a tool, it's like, oh, I say it. But are you hearing it? And in a way, you cannot make yourself hear it. All you can do is say it, and at some point you start hearing. Yeah. But that's a path, that's a tool. I would say the Nembutsu, and then at some point you start savoring it. At some point starts, listen to the Dharma. At some point it starts making sense. And it doesn't matter how many years in a way, because it's like, you can be listening to the Dharma for 20 years, and you're still realizing new things. Things like, only recently, I've heard, and this is a general Buddhist teaching, it's not just Jodo Shinshu, hard is it to be born as a human being. Hard is it to hear the Dharma. I've been hearing that for over 20 years. I've been involved in Buddhism for over 20 years. Only very recently, I came to realize you can only say that because the thing that is hard has already happened. I used to worry about that. Hard is it to hear the Dharma? Ooh, am I going to hear it? There was an anxiety there. You can only say, who says hard is it to be born as a human? Turtles? No, we say that because we're human. So we can appreciate how hard it is because it has already happened. So if you can say these things, it's because they have already happened. But what I'm saying is that you can hear something again and again, and at some point, all that matters is you're on the path. All that matters is you are in connection, because you're always in relation to awakening. You're always in relation to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and that's what Namo Amida Butsu means. Right? So I can use another example that is a very orthodox example in our tradition, which is, you've all heard about Shinjin? No? Okay. So Shinjin is a kind of entrusting to the Namo Amida Butsu. So when you hear this Namo Amida Butsu, right, this relationship, there's a kind of awakening, if you want. There's a kind of appreciation. There's a kind of letting go. Everything I've been talking about today is a kind of in the realm of Shinjin, if you want, right? And so we talk a lot about Shinjin, sometimes translated as faith, but it's not something you believe in. It's the penny drops, right? And you appreciate, I'm already in relation. Right? So, okay. So the way they talk about Shinjin, some people worry a lot about Shinjin. Do I have it? Do I not have it? Has it happened or has it not? Have I heard the Dharma or not? Am I human? Am I not? Right? So they compare it in this way, or they talk about it in this way, which I quite like. They say this Shinjin, this process of, you could say Shinjin is realization, Shinjin is wisdom, Shinjin is the penny drop, right? So it's like getting drunk. So you go out drinking, and you have your first sip of beer, and there's, some alcohol in your system. You carry on drinking, you have 1 glass, 2 glasses, 3 glasses, you get a hangover eventually, fine. At what point did you become drunk? You could say, well, there's a legal limit for driving, fine. You know, we establish limits, right? But at what point? Pharmacologically, you could say from the first sip, alcohol is in your system. And we can say this about coffee, we can say this about a painkiller. I take a painkiller, I don't feel anything, but it's already in my system. Pharmacologically, it's already working, right? So from the first sip, in a way, you're already in the process. Maybe it's when you realize, I'm a bit drunk. Oh, yeah, there's one point when you kind of clock it. Some people actually don't. Some people only realize the morning after. It's like, I did drink too much last night. I've got a bit of a hangover, right? So it doesn't matter. And I say in my community, when we talk about this, it's like, none of you are sober right now. None of you here are sober because you're all here and you're all drinking right now. All of you are drinking coffee, are drinking beer, it doesn't matter. By being here, by making the journey, making the effort, having the interest to be here, you are connected already. When or how the penny drops, how or when you become drunk, well, I don't know. There's many causes and conditions for that. The only thing that matters is you are already in connection, right? And if you are in connection with the Dharma, sooner or later, something happens, right? So, say the Nambutsu. You might hear it. Don't have to say it all the time. Say it when it comes to you, naturally. It's a very natural, spontaneous process, right? Should never become a chore, should never become obligation, duty. It's meant to be something that you enjoy, right? So I'd like to start finishing, and we can chat some more, with a couple of reflections about Paula and this story and this whole journey that I'm very happy I've shared with you. So if we can go further, another slide, another slide, another slide. Previous one. Yes, thank you. Now, of course, this has all been about me. This talk is about me. This talk is about my process, my relationship with Paula. Right? But what about the actual Paula? So I cannot, and I will not pretend to know what happened to Paula after her death, or what she is now, beyond my experience of her. I can give you a doctrinal answer, I can give you a textbook answer. From the bottom of my heart, I do not know. Her body was buried in a biodegradable coffin, which accelerates decomposition. And so she is becoming the soil and the trees of an expansive hill in the south of England. And I go and visit her there. And I enjoy the landscape, I enjoy the trees, I enjoy a beautiful place that she's now part of. So in a sense, that's what she's becoming. But the more I recognize how our lives are intertwined, how they are interdependent, the more I feel that as I heal from the wound of her tragic ending, her tragic death, she is also liberated. When somebody dies, they carry on living through all of us. They are always with us. This is what we remember at Aubon. Now, sometimes, somebody goes, and the memory that lives for us is a nice memory, a warm memory. I think of my grandmother. We quarrel sometimes. She is one of the most important people in my life. But I think of her and I smile. I'm smiling right now. That's great. But I thought of Paula for a long time. I didn't smile. I didn't feel good. So Paula was living through me. Paula was living through my suffering and the suffering of everybody who was connected with her because of the way she went. She left a wound in a lot of hearts. She was really deeply loved by a lot of people. Now, she lives through that wound, but that wound can be healed. As each of us heals, Paula is liberated. And this is my intuitive sense. This is how I feel about it. I'm not going to quote a sutra and talk about this, right? But this is how it feels. People who go live through us. And it's our relationship with that memory, our relationship with their life, in our life, that eventually liberates that person, or whatever that person might be. And so, I'm not going to quote a sutra, but I am going to quote a sutra. If you go to the last slide, please. So we go back to this realization, which I think is the very core of Jodo Shinshu, the very core of the Namo Amida Butsu, the very core of the Dharma. If you are not free, I can't be free. So this thought feeling that Paula is liberated as each of us heals from the suffering of her departure, is my own imaginative, intuitive sense. I'm making that very clear. This is not something based on doctrine. However, to me, it resonates very deeply with the story of the primal vow of Bodhisattva Dharmakara. In my understanding, Dharmakara's deep realization, which is what inspires him to formulate the 48 vows, was this realization, this awakening. I can never be free until all beings are also free. He realized that his life was inextricably interwoven with that of all beings, past, present, and future. And if all beings don't go to the Pure Land, Dharmakara cannot become Amida Buddha. And that's why I say Amida Buddha exists because of me. And I exist because of Amida Buddha, because of each of us. So we all carry the joys and the pains of all beings. They live through us. And we have, like I said, Lain Sensei said this morning, we have a duty of responsibility towards ourselves, towards all beings, which are interconnected, because all beings live through us. So I would like to finish on that note, and I would like to finish with the Nembutsu, and I think it's an opportunity to hear the Nembutsu through each other's voices, so I'll invite you to recite it together and to focus on the hearing, and then I'm happy to talk some more, okay? So let's just hear the Nembutsu together from each other. Namanda, Vunamamda, 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 Amamda, Vutsunamamda, Vunamamda, Vunamamda, Vunamamda. Namanda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Enrique Sensei. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So are there any questions before Sensei?
Please, please, please.
It's kind of a silly question, but you're saying that the Buddha cannot be saved unless we are all saved. Are you referring to every life here on, or just those of us who are actually on this path? Because otherwise he would never be saved. I mean, there are people in this world who are never going to follow this path. So how can he be saved if they don't, they don't
Eventually,
follow this
everybody
path?
gets there. That's the Buddhist teaching. Eventually, everybody gets there. Maybe not in one life. Might take a while.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
How can he save? How can he be saved if there are people in this world who could give a rip about, other people? So how do they get on this path then, if eventually everyone gets on this path?
Right. The way.
That's kind of hard for me to grasp.
Got it. The trouble here is with time. So the way this works is because of time. The problem is time. And so, in Buddhism, we talk about two kinds of time: immediate time and linear time. Right? So, for the most part, we experience time as a line: the past, the present, the future. You were born somewhere at some point. You are here now. You will do something tomorrow. And we think of time as that line. Right? And that is true. That is not an illusion, that's true. But there is another dimension of time, that's like linear, horizontal. There's a vertical dimension, which sometimes we call immediacy. Right? And so mostly only Buddhas realize that. Okay? But immediacy means everything is happening at the same time. So, from the point of view of immediacy, Dharmakara Bodhisattva already became Amida Buddha. And all beings are already following the path. Because all beings will follow the path, from the point of view of immediacy, they are already now, because it's only now, following the path. So, Amida already exists, and we all already on the path, in some sense. From our linear point of view, your sense of time is not my sense of time. Your line is not my line. We are still in the process, right? But from the Buddha's point of view, we all getting there already. So the trouble with Jodo Shinshu is we sometimes speak from the perspective of the Buddha, sometimes speak from the perspective of ourselves. All that matters is Betty. Betty, right? All that matters is Betty. If Betty is on the path, Amida Buddha is solved. You don't need to worry about other people, right? If you're on the path, if you're here, there's Amida Buddha. Like other people, they have their own time, their own process.
Well, in Shinran's writings, he talks about their multiple Amida Buddhas, right? That there are these Amida Buddhas, and each person, if a person becomes awakened, Amida Buddha is born again, or Amida Buddha is awakened, right? And so that's why there's a sense of infinite, time, right? That time isn't necessarily linear in the Buddhist concept, right? So that there are infinite number of Buddhas, an infinite number of Amida Buddhas, because there's infinite number of us who are suffering and who are endlessly in this cycle of transmigration, right? So, yeah, right. But that's that. I mean, that's the kind of the ultimate Buddhist ideal, right? That a bodhisattva, at least in the Mahayana sense, that a bodhisattva gives up their own enlightenment for the sake of others, right? And that's a kind of a universal ethic of compassion, that no one is left behind, right? Everyone is always saved, or everyone is always liberated, right, from their suffering. Yeah, right, and that's why this idea of Genso Echo, of going and returning from the Pure Land, right? as the working of Namo Amida Butsu, the working of enlightenment. We become part of the working of enlightenment. Our loved ones, when they pass from this world, become a Buddha, they become enlightened, they become part of this working of enlightenment to teach us, right, about life, about their lives, you know? And so that's why our relationship right during the Obon season is not about the relationship that have ended, but it's the relationship that continues with all who have come before. So.
I have a story maybe that helps. But anyway, I think there's a question.
There
I'd
was
like
a
to tell
question.
the story because it's a funny one, a little bit, about this point. Yeah. But it's a very good question, Betty. Thank you. It's a very good question. Yeah.
So we have a question online.
Yes.
So Reverend Enrique, you did not mention anger upon first learning of Paulo's suicide. Isn't anger a natural initial reaction upon learning of a death? One asks, why did he or she commit suicide? There could be a cure for his or her disease tomorrow. Why didn't he or she wait? Then the anger turns into acceptance.
Well, what are the stages of grief? You probably, I mean, yeah, I think I didn't feel anger. I know friends who did. Yeah. I personally didn't feel angry at her. I felt angry at myself, and that's what I call guilt. Yeah. So there was anger, but in my case, particularly at myself, that's because I'm, you know, there's no better. It's no better to feel anger at yourself than to feel it towards somebody else. But I know people who are very angry at her, yeah. And it's a very common thing, yeah. Even when somebody dies of natural causes, sometimes you're angry at the person. Why do you have to die now? Right? Yeah, it's just, it's natural, you know, it happens, yeah. Yeah, I mean, anger for me wasn't a big part of this process, but guilt was, and I see this kind of guilt, this kind of depression, as anger turned inwards, yeah. So that's how I would answer that question, yeah.
And we know that the stages of grief and bereavement are not linear also.
Well,
right?
quite.
And
quite.
so, you know, things will cycle through and at different times, and it's just a journey, you know, of life, of grief, of bereavement that is a natural part of our living and loving and you know, and letting people go, right? So that journey is just a lifelong journey. But it's a journey that we can manage, right? And through the teachings, we can find ways of better managing that journey, you know, and finding comfort, finding strength, you know, within, through that. So. Oh, okay, another thought. So when we say Namo Amida Butsu, we are responding to the two Buddhas calling us to venture onto the white path, saying, I am entrusting myself to you.
Fine. That's one way of looking at it. Yeah, that's one way of expressing it. It's many ways. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you.
Well, I mean, in a sense, I mean, I always bring this up. I'm not sure if this Sterling is the Sterling I'm thinking of. Depending on who the person is, I would answer that differently. But I mean, what Sterling is saying is not wrong. It's one way of, I mean, we all have slightly different flavors. And basically, we all making sense of the teaching in our own way. So the way I present it to you is the way I make sense of it myself. Might resonate with you more or less, right? You could put it that way, the way Sterling was putting it. There are other ways of putting it. I mean, I entrust particularly to the relationship rather than to you. I trust in the fact that I am in relation, in connection. Now, I was using this example yesterday. What happens when you spend a lot of time with someone? What happens? That happens, yes, Jack. Yeah, that's true. What else happens? Yeah, they annoy you. You get tired of them. Yeah, sure. Right. I think that's the first thing, right? Because yeah, I mean that's how you feel, and that's the subjective aspect. That's true. But you spend a lot of time together. You kind of start. There's an expression. So somebody yesterday in Hilo, they said like, "Oh, you start picking, what is it? Picking up the ways." That's true. That's a more like active, self-aware way, if you want. But there's another expression in English, like, it rubs off on you. You become like that without even realizing, right? So what happens when you spend a lot of time listening to the Dharma, listening to the Nembutsu? This is the kind of, this is how it works. This hearing, this connection. As you are in contact with it, something starts to rub off on you. How can you say, oh, when did I become like my husband, like my wife, like my, well, you spend a lot of time together, like my friend, like my housemate. Well, you just spend a lot of years together. It just kind of happens, right? That's the kind of thing, yeah. And there's a nice story. I think this is from another Buddhist tradition, but I'm going to take the liberty to adapt it to a Jodo Shinshu context. And because I think Betty's question is so good. And so there's a teacher and there's a student, and then the teacher is giving this teaching, right? All sentient beings are embraced by the Buddha. And then the student goes like, so that dog over there is like, the teacher loses patience, like, okay. But what am I saying? It's just like, yeah, you said all beings, so like the dog over there, right? I said, and so this goes on for like a number of years. Now the student goes back, yeah, but you said all sentient beings, right? And what about the dog outside the temple? Right? And then the teacher, let's say, maybe a Jodo Shinshu teacher will say, like, Namanda. He just doesn't walk out of the room. Right? It's like, nah. And then at some point, this student realizes, all sentient beings are embraced means I am embraced. That's the key point. So the Dharma always needs to come back to you. It's always about you. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. We all do it. It's really funny, like, yeah.
So I guess, are there any final questions as we kind of wrap up our session today?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's hard to talk about it, yeah.
Throughout that 49 days, or is it still recycling? How long? Because I feel I can't say we went through it, but and I don't say I've gone through the process. I don't think she's gone through the process.
Again, it's very hard to say when or how long it takes. So different people take different times. And I think the main thing is to also hold yourself and be kind to yourself. And it takes the time it takes. I think sometimes we want to speed it up because it's not pleasant, it's not nice, right? But no, it wasn't 49 days, no. I don't know. Today, I don't know if you noticed, at one point when I said she was loved by so many people, I choked. I changed her name partly because it's so hard to actually say her actual name in public. So I'm still grieving. In a way, it's a kind of long process. But it's better than what it was 3 years ago, sure. So I think the same thing that, I didn't get your name, sorry, a gentleman. Yeah. Jesse. The same question that Jesse asked, which was a very good question, is there any tool? Well, you can listen to the Dharma, you can do things that help you, that make you feel good, express your emotions, share it with others, right? There might be other things that can be done in certain contexts, like therapy, I don't know. But ultimately, it takes time, and there's no way of saying when. And it will always hurt a little. It will always carry some of that. But one thing I can tell you, this is the good thing about impermanence. It does not remain the same. And every day that passes, you are moving away from that raw pain. It's not linear, and that some days feel worse than the former day. So it feels like you're going backwards, but you're never going backwards. So every day is a little step. And you need to find your own way of connecting, processing, right? I'm not going to tell you how to do that. I cannot tell you how to do that, but yeah, every day you're moving away, and you're not alone. That's the most important thing. You're never alone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if there are any final questions for Sensei, we can conclude. Any final questions? Oh, Betty, yeah.
Please. Should come to Honolulu tomorrow to my session. I'm going to talk about that. I will keep us here for a while. Okay, in 20 seconds. It's very simple. You don't have to become someone else. A lot of the paths I've encountered, and maybe that's my problem, maybe that's how I was hearing, right? It's about you can become a better person. There's this aspect of you that you can get rid of, or you need to get rid of. There's something you can get. And Jodo Shinshu is, as you are, see how you are, accept how you are. You are accepted, you are loved as you are, with your pain, your suffering, your selfishness, right? With everything, you are accepted as you are. That for me is something I've never heard before. I'm not saying it doesn't exist elsewhere, but I had never heard it. And when I heard it, I was like, this is something else. So, 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again, Sensei, for sharing the Dharma with us and for being with us in Hawaii. So we're glad to have you here. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody here for joining us in person, also everyone online. Big mahalo. Thank you for making this a successful event. And thank you for sharing and for just being part of this. So mahalo. So actually, in closing, let's please join me in Gassho, and let's recite the Nembutsu together.
Namanda, Vutsunamanda, Vutsunamanda, Namanda, Vutsunamanda. Namanda.
Thank you, everybody. Get home safely. So.